I'm okay.
Okay.
All right, well, it is 3:30 and I am a stickler for starting on time and respecting your time. Everybody's been busy working all day, and I know it's kind of the tail end of the day and you might be a little bit tired, but we want to spark you up with this class, Symmetry, Asymmetry. Been very excited about this, and it got a huge response, and so we invited everyone that came in with the numbers that we had, and you got a box of materials, but then we also invited people to join in even if they didn't get the materials, because they're pretty readily obtainable. And I really feel strongly about having inexpensive materials that are accessible so that all students can get them and teachers aren't spending too much of their own money, even though I know they do, to make this happen. And we have a really interesting group today. So there's lots of secondary art teachers, middle and high school art teachers, even have a principal. There are people involved in STEAM work and in math. And of course, this is an example of how you can learn through and with the arts and use mathematical concepts as well. And the interesting thing about doing Zoom webinars is, besides lots of people from all over the county, we have people from Shasta, from Plumas, San Lorenzo, Fall River, Fresno, Mount Diablo. So we welcome all of you today. And it's really my privilege to introduce you to Dennis Johnson and Joan Black. They're kind of a dream team, as you would say, artists and educators, and have just such a friendly and inviting style. Dennis has been an educator for many years at College of the Desert here locally, and I had the privilege of attending a printmaking workshop that they conducted at Sunnylands, which is really a great place to experience. So we have a lot going on today, so we're going to jump right in and take it away, Dennis and Joan.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome. First of all, we wish to thank Louisa for her hard work coming together with teachers and administrators and leaders in education all across the state. My name is Joan. This is Dennis.
I'm Dennis.
And as we're welcomed, we like to welcome you. We are pleased that you're joining us today, and we'd like to dedicate this hour to you as art teachers. We became artists with guidance from committed teachers like yourselves when we were young. In these times, art is important to our lives, very important to our lives, and to the social, emotional, and intellectual health of our students, the teachers, the administrators, and our families. Thank you for being here.
So today, you can see from the title slide, we're going to explore symmetry and asymmetry. And these are methods to achieve balance in compositions. We will define each term. We'll show you some really great examples, both iconic images and former student work. And we then will all share in creating compositions that we will show at the end, probably about the last half hour with the gallery walk. And Louisa is going to direct that. We ask you today to use geometric shapes in creating your compositions, that is circles, triangles, squares, and rectangles. And I'll try to explain that in the studio time.
We want to share as much information as we can today in our 1 hour together, allowing time for all of us to put some ideas into practice. We know that this is a fun kind of art experience because although Dennis and I come from different perspectives, as teachers, we have become artists and we realize how important this art is. We're inviting you to help us put these ideas into practice.
So let's examine some of these, hopefully learning outcomes that you will take with you with this workshop. Please remember, this is a flexible exercise. It's if you want to keep it very short, very simple, that's fine. If you want to extend it over several sessions, in doing so, you'll be able to create, your students will be able to create very interesting and engaging composition. This is also a very workable virtual exercise, something you can easily share as we are doing through virtual classroom.
You can see in the picture here of the materials that we're going to be using today. We've got a heavy drawing pad, construction paper, and the colors aren't the 57 varieties of color that we normally see if we're out and about in town. This is black paper, white paper, gray paper, and then we use glue stick and a little compass and scissors and a ruler or something we can get down the line. But what we have is we've looked at these materials and said by constraining rather than making it a free-for-all, we get people to focus on the experience of the.
Well, it's, as Louisa said very early, these are very simple, familiar materials. And, you know, this is not a water class, thank goodness, because I would not be able to teach that. So we're using very basic materials that's, they're not intimidating.
They're not intimidating. Thank you, Dennis. And I was being intimidating. I mean, being intimidated. The courses are very, very appealing and certainly not as difficult as watercolor. So we can offer a direct approach to learning symmetry and asymmetry.
So we're going to look at two very classic, iconic examples to point out symmetry and asymmetry. You know, we're all familiar with the Taj Mahal. This is a classic example of symmetry. In this case, the symmetry supports the structure of the building, and it allows the viewer to have a sense of tradition, stability, and familiarity. Now, Joan will talk about a totally different piece of artwork.
So from the other side of symmetry, asymmetry, with asymmetry, we have Starry Night, one of the world's most famous paintings. And this painting, unlike the Taj Mahal, is asymmetrical, and yet it still feels balanced and strategic in the layout of the design. Let's take another look at asymmetry. In these examples, the Taj Mahal and the Starry Night, you can see how different approaches, symmetry, asymmetry, can achieve balance and harmony. We encourage you to ask your students, why is balance important? And I think as we wake up in the morning, we start the day with balance exercises and we end the day with balance and good night.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So let's look at the definition of symmetry. Reflection, or also known as bilateral symmetry, is where both sides along a central axis are a mirror image of each other. Simply stated, both sides or halves are exactly the same. So many people feel that symmetrical design, even though it's very formal in its structure, can be very restful and very calming.
Symmetry in nature. I love this. Bees, birds, butterflies, and botany. Everyone can be happy when they're surrounded by these soothing, softly repetitive plants and animals. Whenever you have this kind of easy thing for students to identify, this is a great time to ask students to think of these examples in nature and how many more they can find.
Could even ask them to go out with their iPhones or cameras and rather than take a selfie, take a picture of symmetry in nature.
Or maybe selfie with the bees.
Yes, something.
Okay, here architecture relies upon symmetry and balance and reveals the structure of the bridge. This is one more example of symmetry and how in nature we can create something that changes it from being just a natural experience to something that's a complex architectural piece. Although open to the sky, this bridge feels very strong. And this is inverted symmetry. We've got playing cards, and you will laugh a little, have a chuckle a little. The king is up and the king is down. The queen is up and the queen is down.
You'll probably, thanks to this workshop, never look at a deck of playing cards again.
I think you're probably right.
A couple other types of symmetry that I'm sure you have seen is rotational or radial symmetry. Think of the various cultures that use radial symmetry in their iconography. I think we can think of mandalas as being one of those. The other type is translational symmetry, which is simply a pattern that repeats. Think of Escher's work. I'm sure we all know of M.C. Escher's work and his repetition and how he comes up with such playful compositions and works of art where he's confusing the positive and negative shapes just by simple translational symmetry.
I'm going to explore bilateral symmetry a bit. And here, the positive and negative space is reversed along the axis for a really dramatic effect. In this, artists reversed the top and bottom field so that the background was shifted to create a complex and engaging work. In the same slide, each composition is suggesting movement and action while maintaining symmetry on both the left and the right sides.
So this is pushing the boundaries of symmetry a little bit. Usually we associate symmetry with a more staid, more formal. So this is really interesting. I think the students came up with these two solutions. So let's look at asymmetry definition. Basically, if you understand symmetry, then you're halfway there to understanding asymmetry. Asymmetry is simply two sides that don't match. It's they're uneven or they're out of whack, right? And that is the beauty of asymmetry. It's also the challenges of asymmetry. Some artists find the approach to asymmetry to be much more challenging because it's not as formal, it's not as initially structured. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to kind of start working on that. So I think it's important to note in asymmetry, and you think back to Van Gogh and the painting of the Starry Night. I don't think he started to say, well, I'm going to put the moon over here, I'm going to put the tree here. Just naturally, that's the way his vision was. But, you know, I think asymmetry really requires the artist, the designer, to be more flexible, to consider more options and respond immediately to shapes that you're putting down to balance positive, negative space as you work on the composition. And I think when we start working on our compositions, I think you'll see that wait a minute, there's no kind of formula here. I'm having to make decisions myself.
And if we take a little time and look at the asymmetrical compositions here, we'll notice that the composition on the left has a diagonal central axis that's going from the left top to the right bottom. And the shapes are very different, but somehow the balance has been achieved. This is really interesting student work where they've been thoughtful and careful and really composed something that really does make you think about balance.
I want to point out something very quickly, is the composition on the right also asymmetrical.
Mm.
Look at the square and the circle, and the student has done this kind of interesting thing where as the circle intersects the square, I'm kind of talking about the right-hand side, they've reversed that. So it's an interesting play of positive, negative shape, and yet we still continue the shape of the circle, even though it's cut up.
Very true.
Here's another example, and this is pointing out, like, if you allow this exercise with your students to have some more time, what interesting directions it can go. So this is the same student doing a symmetrical, asymmetrical work. You can see they kind of use the similar shapes, very different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the asymmetrical design composition on the right. Have a large, so scale plays an interesting part here, but it's almost, she has captured a moment in time. We don't know whether this large circle is going to fall backwards or going to continue to go forward. So she's created a very unsettling effect, movement, but yet it retains its balance.
Mm-hmm. We have some more examples of student work that has been astounding work over the years. This on the left-hand side is symmetrical, and the work on the right is asymmetrical. The one on the left has the inverted symmetry, remember the playing cards? And while the asymmetrical composition on the right was similarly humorous and whimsical, this follows through with that.
So just by simple triangles, squares, placement, and the relationship of shapes, it not only is creating balance, but he has this kind of very playful feel just from using geometric shapes. It's pretty interesting, I think. Okay, so the process, we've talked about how simple the materials are, and now it is time to start. And we're going to work along with you. We're going to stop the screen share and focus our screen on our tabletop here and try to make compositions along with you.
So some people have already started. If you have not, let's start now. Louisa will tell you and us how to share our experiences, how to work with them, and how to keep time.
Okay, studio time.
Studio time.
Okay, so it is 3:48 now. I want to give us about 20 minutes to work on this. So I invite you to, Janice and Joan are going to have their cameras on, and they're going to be
I'm
working.
going to turn it down.
Yeah, so you can watch them. And then at about 10 after 4, we'll do some sharing out, so a gallery walk. So we'll go, and I invite you to mute us. We won't be talking a lot during this period. And put your music on, put on something that you like that helps you feel loose and relaxed. And this is your time for work. You're going to be working too, because I'm really excited about inverted symmetry. That's so I'm like, okay. And I love, like I said earlier, the STEAM concept, how the math is being taught with and through the arts. So anyway, this is our work time. I'm going to put it back onto speaker view. And there we go. And so you can watch. Are you doing one type of symmetry and Joan's doing the other, Dennis?
Yes, we're gonna try to do that. I just wanted to show our participants some quick examples that Joan did. So a little bit like a cooking show. We did a lot of prep work before. So
there's always prep work, that's for sure.
Right. And then, but yes, we are going to start. And then this is an example of very simple shapes to create asymmetric design. So now we've got to start, and we'll go right now.
Okay.
So Joan has kindly cut out shapes
Oh, nice.
Right? Yeah. So I told you it was a little bit like a cooking show. We've done all the
The
prep.
ingredients. Well, I think one of the fun things I like about it is the cutting and the tactile sensation of this art making.
There's a few things that might be very helpful. Because of our time limitation, it might be good to cut from multiple sheets of paper. Same thing. That way you can have quite a few shapes and objects to work with.
Can you demonstrate that?
Pardon me?
Can you demonstrate that, please?
Sure. Yeah. So this is already cut smaller, but let's say I'm going to do this. So I'm cutting 3 sheets of paper at one time. So it ends up that I have now 3 shapes.
Okay.
I might decide to use this as part of my design. So I would say the areas that you cut out, in other words, what we might consider the scrap, save, because you might end up using them, as is this example, right? So you can see Joan use the outside of the circles that she cut as part of the design. So
Right,
don't
sometimes the scraps are these.
anything away.
Okay.
Don't throw anything away, but do let yourself wait. You've got that glue stick. We're giving you the pressure of time, and don't educators know that already, but please let yourself have some time to arrange and rearrange until you get that aha feeling, and then use the glue stick.
And of course, you could see with the examples, particularly the student examples we showed, they had more time than 20 minutes to work on their compositions. And I'm afraid I'm not going to do very well. I never do well at workshops, but I'll try. Joan does much better job at workshops.
Well, and our goal isn't to get finished, it's to get underway, right?
That's true. Good point. Thank you. Now I feel a little bit
You
more
can relax. No judgment. We want to keep this a safe space where we're having fun with our art, right?
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
And point being is, and I see a lot of students doing this, is again, I think as Joan said, just start cutting out a lot of shapes, start arranging them. Don't worry too much about gluing them down. Don't cut one piece and glue it right down, because then you're kind of tied to that. And so you want to be able to have flexibility and to change. Another little secret is for if you're considering the asymmetrical composition, triangles are really good, because you can create this feeling of imbalance or unsettling feeling just with triangles.
I have a question. Were you
Yes.
going to demonstrate the compass?
Compass, yes.
Like me?
Okay, I will do that. Now I have a little bit probably nicer compass that came in your kit, but the principle is the same. And so the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have the lead on one side and the point of the compass on the other. Make sure those are even. If your lead is higher or lower, then your compass is not going to work as effectively. So So make sure, close the compass together and make sure these 2 points, the lead and the point of the compass, are together. So this one now is a nice compass because you can see I have this gear that kind of keeps it very sturdy when I'm ready to draw the circle. So normally what you want to do is hold the compass at the top here so that I'm trying to see, okay. So when you draw your circle, you kind of just rotate your finger. So you have pressure on the point of the compass, and you can even actually, I'm trying to draw it a little darker. So can everyone see that? I don't know if you can or not. It might be a little too light. Okay. The other thing that you can do that's in some ways a lot easier if you have the space is move your paper. Just move your paper around. I'm a little bit out of space here, so but if it's smaller space, so you can just move your paper around. Important thing is don't grip the compass this way with 2 handles, because not so much on this one, but the ones you have that don't have a gear, as you start your rotation, the radius, that's the distance, this half a diameter, that's what the compass is doing, will change. And so you won't get a perfect circle. Is that helpful? Is that good? Okay.
Right, thank you.
Mhm.
And I was just thinking that most of the teachers today are secondary, but if I were an elementary classroom teacher, the idea of prepping a bunch of shapes and having them ready for students, or what if you gave them a bag full of shapes and then they could demonstrate their understanding of symmetry or asymmetry?
So the other, anticipating a question we might get is why geometric shapes? I just want to do a heart. I just want to do flowers. And the reason is, and it's particularly true for, I think, high school students, maybe even middle school, is that you want them to focus on what we're trying to teach is art principles. And these principles are not only balance achieved by symmetry and asymmetry means, but we're exploring the relationship of shapes on a page. We're exploring positive, negative space. We could explore color. And we haven't discussed something that you might add to the material list is a marker or pen so that you could draw lines. So limiting the color palette, limiting the shapes to geometric shapes helps the student to think a little bit more abstractly. And that's, I think, a real key component for students, because then you don't get so involved in, well, does it look like a flower? Does it look like a bird? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it doesn't, this gives you a direct access to kind of basic art principles that they will need to do as if they pursue art throughout their life. I do very realistic work, and yet I was trained as an abstract expressionist. Joan comes through more of a craft tradition, but when she does printmaking, her works are very amorphic, very abstract shapes, and yet, you know, I can certainly relate to them. So we both have an upbringing of these kind of fundamental artistic concepts. Does anyone have any questions? Or Louisa, is there something else I should talk about?
I was just going to ask one more question, which is, do you mind explaining positive and negative space?
Sure, sure. That's a good point. Let me see if I can. Oh,
Sorry to throw you a curveball. You might not have something right there.
no, it's not. So if you look at this example, you usually, well, I think it's good.
Okay.
So usually we're starting out with a blank canvas, a blank page. So that is really usually considered your negative space. It's the field. Another way to explain this is field ground. And so we have a negative space, which is considered the background, and the shapes here come forward. So this is what we see, and we see them floating on the background. So these I would consider positive shapes against a negative background. So it's figure ground is another. So this would be the figure, and the ground is your palette in the background. And what's kind of an interesting thing is to change that dynamic. So here, by the use of gray, so it's almost like the black is, even though that's the field, the gray kind of recesses from the black. The black is so strong. So you're changing the dynamic of the positive negative space.
Interesting. I'm glad you explained about the limited color choice, the white, gray, and black, because I wondered about that.
Right. And so here's another example where the white picks up your field, right? And yet it because it's overlapped, it appears in front of the black image. So you're beginning to play with the relationship of space here. Is the white like the whole, where, is it just a whole that is reflecting the base, which is white, or is it an added shape? So
well, that little tiny triangle is kind of interesting too.
Right. And also allowing yourself to kind of go off, not keeping it on the square in this case, or rectangle, but allowing it to kind of be diagonally across and kind of pop out at the ends. It just always is adding kind of interest to that. In terms of the color, again, it's similar to using, I think, geometric shapes. Of course, you can add color, because color is such a vibrant part of any art piece that you do. But by focusing on neutral colors, again, you're focusing on what is the goal of this exercise. It's to understand balance, and it's to work with symmetry and asymmetry in creating balance. So eliminating some of the options that a student would have focuses them on this particular outcome. Because you can look at a painting, the one painting I would show would be Moreau painting, where it's predominantly gray with a little red dot. And the gray images dominate in terms of scale, but the color of the red balances it out. So you certainly can use color, but again, it's trying to get students to think about these kind of very fundamental art principles and concepts. And I'm not doing very well on my composition.
I was gonna say, I see Joan is running away with
yeah.
her piece over there. Better get on this. I'll stop asking you questions, Dennis, or I'll ask Joan questions.
Well, that's okay. I don't mind talking.
No, you don't mind.
So you can kind of see the different types of shapes that we kind of came up with, and they're very simple. And what I like to try to do is do this kind of where you begin to intersect another shape. And there was one composition I pointed out where there was a circle, but it interplayed with other shapes. It changed the color to those other shapes, and yet we still visually connected it as a circle. So all of these little things add kind of intrigue and interest to artworks.
Do you find over the years that students have an easier time with symmetry or asymmetry, or is there no difference?
That's, you know what, that's a great
Depends on the
question.
student.
We might ask our participants here.
Which is
Um,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
which do they start with first? What do you start with first? And I think what you start with first might be what's more comfortable to you.
Mhm.
So I would say symmetry is usually more comfortable in my experience with students. We relate, I think, easier to symmetry.
Maybe it's a personality thing though too, because I've always thought asymmetry was easier.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Yeah.
I think I want to conduct a survey because the women that I know who are brave about what they wear in combinations in clothing and cosmetics and the shoes, if you ask them to, check what do you like more and gave them examples,
Mhm.
hands down, those who liked asymmetry found it easier to work with. They have one earring here, a different style here,
Mhm.
all kinds of intriguing things. So my thought is women and men who really like fashion and things, colors out of doors,
Mhm.
unique kinds of furniture arrangements, all of that usually gives you.
So maybe people who are more rule breakers by
Yes,
nature feel more
Yes.
comfortable.
yes,
and
I was
people who are more
hesitating.
analytical and formalized would feel more
Yes.
comfortable with symmetrical.
Well,
Maybe
it would be interesting to get
to do a
conduct
survey.
small poll with our participants, particularly those people that their background is math.
Yeah,
And
that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
So
feel free to put it in the chat, anybody, which one you feel comfortable with or why you think that might be.
I think that's a great idea because the freedom of the chat also makes it so we can revisit that and see what you think.
Well, what do you think of the concept of Gestalt? Can you speak to that? Because you're both working right now. That's something that I learned long ago. It was just that moment where if you add one more thing, you ruin it. You know what I mean? It's kind of restraint, but that analyzing your piece. Can you talk about that a little bit?
you
You go.
no.
No, I'm serious.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I have both a background in fine art and graphic design as well as teaching. And I think that in any of the arts, you can continue just to go and rework and not quite happy with it, not quite satisfied with it,
But work with passion with that.
and work with passion. And there's such a thing as getting something to 97% completion where you feel it's there, but missing the 3%. And you could spend as much time on the whole project with that 3% as you did with the entire 97%. In graphic design, I've found that, there's a deadline. Well, that certainly helps bring it
Right.
to
It gets your attention.
The fine art, I think you realize you can always continue to work on it, and it might be better to go to the next painting. And what I encourage my students to do, and also I try to do it in my own work, is to work on the entire canvas at once, not just develop one area and get that finished and go to a next. So I think that's kind of getting to answer your question, is that I realize that all the parts are come together to make this an interesting piece, a good piece. And I'm very critical on a part of the painting that I just finished and just saying, oh no, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. But I'm training myself to let go of that and say, well, it's not finished yet. Let's keep going and see how that works. And Joan, do you have any thoughts on that? You're just being a busy bee.
I'm being a busy bee, but I think it's one of those things where you've got all of these things on your plate that you're talking about, Louisa, and then there's just a moment where you say, I have to step back from this, because it isn't that there's anything wrong with it, it's that I can't see it. So I have to step back to go forward.
Right.
And
Understood.
with Dennis and the 97% that he's talking about, he's regularly trying to get to 99. And sometimes that's really possible and really important and should be done. And other times it's just kind of a nature of his personality is to just stay on the track.
One thing I want to show, I'm going back to our tabletop now. Didn't mention, there's a nice thing about having shapes and repeating them. So what I'm beginning to do is use these very thin rectangular shapes, almost a line, a very thick line, and incorporating them into the composition to make some type of organization of this asymmetrical design. And so repetition is another thing students can learn from this exercise. Is we talk about scale, we can talk about repetition, and we mentioned, I don't have something here, well, what Joan is doing is she's using shapes that she cut out as part of the design. So not only the shape that she cut out, but the remains of the shape. And then that's a way that you can kind of do a repetitive element, but it's a little different.
She looks like she's gone a little 3D too.
Yeah.
Popping off the page.
That is Joan. I will go by the rules, and she'll start doing her own thing. So.
Well, some of the chat comments were, Sydney says asymmetry for sure. She's taught math and art and middle school, so she left brain, right brain, and probably doing both very successfully. Elizabeth prefers asymmetry. She tried to do symmetrical for this activity, but it turned out asymmetrical. Well, that's a happy accident, right? Sometimes the materials speak to you, right, and you think you have it one way, and they're like, no, we're not doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And Elizabeth also said, I think it depends on the activity. I'm linear about some things in life, but creatively, I tend to be more abstract and asymmetrical. I feel you. I'm very linear about projects and getting things done and administrative tasks, but just those rules go out the window when I'm making art. Thankfully, that's probably why I like to continue to make art. Feels good. So let's see, how are we doing on time? It is 4:14. So I think another few minutes.
I see Denise. See what it looked like.
Hold on, let me get the gallery. Okay. Well, I was going to wait another minute or two, and then I'll put up the gallery. And if you would unmute yourself, so, we love to be in the room together, but we love it to be more personal. And we didn't spend any time with icebreakers just because we knew we had a lot to do in just one short hour. But if you would unmute yourself, show us your piece. And there's a couple people that have been with me a few days this week, so I know they're not shy about that. And then just tell us what you think was successful about this, or something that you learned, something that was different than what you had anticipated going in. I think that would be interesting. And I know I'm really excited to do this as an art lesson for younger children, adapted in a way that would work for the elementary age, K-5. So I'm going to play around with that.
Okay, great.
And having some experience with kindergarten many years ago.
That's right. I forgot about that early childhood experience that you have.
So yeah, actually I loved it. It was not what I was expecting, but I loved it. With something like this, if the shapes are there, we could make a whole lesson around the pre-math and the early math, counting how many of this and how many of that, and then organizing them, because the organizing and the structure of that would all be part of a lesson.
Yep.
And it would be fun to watch them.
Well, yes, and also, I mean, shapes, I want to say that second grade, you know, learning the shapes, maybe it's younger, but there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. And I think, you know, one of my goals for elementary and building up the program that we're doing is that it tends to be teachers, or it starts to be taught in middle and high school, but we want to get into that much younger and blend it with other subjects, integrate it with other subjects, because it gives a lot of power to that learning. Okay, so I am watching the gallery, so you can either unmute yourself and just go for it, or I'm looking for you if you're raising your hand to share. It's really fun. I'm not spying on you. The whole time I had the windows closed, but it's fun to see everybody working. I had to stop working because I was asking so many questions. I couldn't draw a straight line with my ruler at that point. Let's see. Carolina, could I get you to share what you're doing? I mentioned you, I think, before you got on, and what you did with foam and the yellow, no, orange and brown yesterday was phenomenal. I enjoyed that so much. You're unmuted. I mean, you need to unmute.
I can't pick up today's work because it's not all glued down, but it's sort of like, so far, this what it looks like.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. You're going asymmetrical.
A dimensional aspect to it.
Yeah.
If you want, I can show you the orange and brown. I
Yeah,
have
you
it
could-
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We were
We already
working with
heard about it. So
Foam. Yeah, we were working with foam shapes yesterday.
fun.
So this is the cutout shapes from this. So I kind of was experimenting around with how they might go together, and most,
Look at that.
it was pretty fun.
Absolutely.
It
Yes.
looks very fun.
Foam on foam.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's
Thank
me.
you very much.
Thank you, Carolina.
I'll go next because I gotta. My
Sounds
name
good.
is Amber.
Hi,
I
Amber.
teach an integrated.
Hi, Amber.
I teach an integrated arts middle school program.
Great.
So there's what I made. But
Beautiful.
what
Oh,
I found
fantastic.
was
Yeah.
I
Yes.
like it better. So there's how I created it. I was looking at it like this, but I like it better like that.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so I
It
turned
is.
it on its side, and all of a sudden I went, oh, there it is. I
Right.
think I'm actually done.
All right. Victory.
I didn't think I was finished until I turned it on its side.
There you go.
No,
That's
I
so
would
fun.
just say a lot of artists look at their work in a mirror to reverse it, to see what, just to be able to see it differently. So
Yeah,
that's a very important thing to do. So
yeah,
good.
it
Good
was
for you.
very fun. And one thing I really like, because I've just had my middle schoolers back for, we've had 4 times where they're coming half days, and they don't quite know how to settle, and they don't know how to calm. Everything is so new that I think this is going to be, it's just such a calming thing, it's just very calming, and they don't have to really think, they're so, and I think it's just perfect for them to kind of reintegrate into being
Okay.
here as something where
Great.
they don't have to think too hard. You only have 3 colors. Because I know what you're talking about. I have the girl who always argues with me. It's like, but I want to do a dragon who's doing this and this. I was like, you can do that all you want. after you try this once. So, yeah, I appreciate it. It's great.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you,
Amber.
Sharon.
Very, very nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely fun to hear it.
I like that she rotated it. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
to always rotate and decide. And then you have another decision of not just where to put things, but how do you want to go about and look at it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have
So-
some work you wanted to share with us, Denise?
I taught
think that-
elementary for 24 years and did a lot of art.
Mhm.
And now I've been teaching math and science in middle school for 7 years. I love it. It is like my dream come true.
Oh,
Isn't
great.
that wonderful?
So I'm not done, but
Oh, great.
Oh, wow.
Good.
so I was, and now when I look at it, I don't like a couple parts. I don't prefer them, but what the heck, you know? We're just dealing with it. I like this part the best.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would do more of
intersection.
that.
Good.
Well done. Thanks for sharing.
But I
I'll
like
share-
3 colors.
I'll share mine, but I have
Great.
to share my screen to show you because none of my pieces are glued down yet.
Okay. Let's see. You want to try sharing? Yeah, okay. Oh,
Oh, nice.
I love
that's really
that.
interesting.
I didn't have any gray, and I made my own gray and then decided I was going to use my old atlas. So I'm still kind of playing around with it, but like I said, it started out inverted symmetry, and then it just didn't want to stay that way.
I had other ideas. I love using the map as a
I
resource.
do too. I
Yeah.
do too. And you've really, the map adds a textural element to it, which we didn't really discuss.
That's
but
right.
It adds very nice texture. and a little bit of
Wouldn't it be
color.
interesting to have a map of where you're from? And you could do an I am from poem with it.
Right.
And
Yes.
Right.
go in
Yes.
different directions with that. Love the map as an element. It's awesome. Well, we have about 7 more minutes and super eager to see anyone. Yeah, no, Laura does gorgeous work and I'm always calling on her. Can I impose on you today?
Yeah. Turns off. I actually had to come home and I left all my stuff. So I had to do the same thing as the last person and use something different. So I used I cut up some text that I had.
Well, that's interesting.
Great. Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that like
Okay.
text in a picture? Okay.
Yeah, there's a picture in it and there's some text. But I was trying to get black, gray, like you all had. But I think this is a great way for I have middle school and high school, but just to get them to understand composition and where to place things, because I always talk about the rules of thirds and I haven't done this sort of assignment in a really long time. And I'm thinking that this would be a good start for next year so that they settled with placing things closer to the center and in the rules of thirds as well. So, but
I like the scale too that you have. It's smaller and then the pieces are smaller.
Yeah.
thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
It's always so interesting, Jonathan John, to see what, in this case, they're teachers, but there are students today, what
Yes.
they come up with, right? And their
Yes.
creativity and,
Right.
you know, 'cause like I said, not everybody got a box. And so they were figuring out, their own stuff
Right.
to
Right.
make happen today. So I
Absolutely.
really appreciate that.
That's another level of commitment too. It's like, no, I'm going to do this and enjoy it and get on with
I
it.
will not be dissuaded, right?
Right.
Well, that's teachers, period. This year, talk about extraordinary efforts.
oh,
Extraordinary.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Cazala, I'm wondering if you ventured an art project today. This is a principal of a STEAM school, as if I remember correctly.
You are correct. So I took the idea, and then I'm really excited because LACMA reopened and Yoshi Tomonara retrospective finally is open, so you can start getting tickets, and it's one of my favorites. So I used one of his things as a piece, and this is the symmetrical piece. And so it's from his, it's called Harmless Kitty Onesie. And, and I was just playing around, and then as I took and cut out the shapes from here, then I transferred them over to this, and so then I started playing with this.
Wow.
Very good.
That's terrific.
Yeah, good use of materials and time. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very cool.
That's
Very
great.
cool.
I liked how you homaged a favorite artist. That's one of
Mhm.
my favorite things to do. Okay.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hi. Hi, Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
Yeah, I totally didn't use time effectively. I had a few different ideas that I abandoned along the process. This one is kind of just like a product of just grabbing pieces and then what I call sending it. So there's so much more I want to do, and there's so many more pieces that I cut that I didn't use. So I'm definitely enjoying it. Would love more time. I think that's just the only thing I would want to do, is just be in studio time longer. But
Well,
yeah,
this is just our studio time. You can go on for another hour, 2 hours.
Oh, I am.
Go our studio time,
Sydney,
you know.
could you hold your piece back up again, please? Sydney?
Yeah.
This, I think, is interesting because,
We can't see it unless he's talking. Hold on one second.
there you go. Oh, okay. So his created, we were talking about positive, negative space or field, ground. You've got this whole middle area that's really kind of what we consider the background, but look how prominent it comes up because he's got work on either side. So it's a very, I think, interesting composition already that,
Well, and
that you've got going.
he has two positive negatives. Yeah, I mean, he's got two going, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. So,
interesting.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just wanted
All right.
to share.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Is there anyone I'm missing that's willing to share out with the group?
Yeah, I can share.
Excellent. Hi, Paul.
Hi, I teach 7th and 8th grade art at Norco Intermediate. I love it. I was a contractor for about 20 years and changed my career, and best thing I ever did. I was listening to what Amber had said earlier about, coming out of this lockdown and the students just really trying to find their place, trying to find, trying to just kind of reach out and grab something, familiar. And I think this project is, it starts off simple and it is simple throughout. And the things that are being taught are really, really valuable for them. This is, but this is what I came up with anyway.
oh, wow. Excellent.
Great. I love all the gray that he used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it the influence of concrete?
Yeah. I was going to go with this, though. I think I like it like that a little bit better.
Yes. Yeah.
So it looks
And
great both ways.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Is there anybody we're missing?
Julia? Yeah.
Hi, I'm at Patriot High School over in Harupa Valley, and so this is my first time doing one of these things, so I'm really excited about this.
Good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, it's been interesting this entire year, and teaching online for the majority of it. And so,
Mhm.
I've got a friend of mine over at Rubidoux, and we've been doing a video podcast between the two of us for all of our kids. So this is a really good way to be able to do something that sort of, combines this whole principles of art and so forth. So I hate drawing. I hate cutting out circles. So I went totally linear. And so was going
Oh,
like that.
Mm.
So I was
Very
starting
nice.
out like that, and I went like
Yeah.
that, and I'm like, kind of
Yeah.
like that one.
yeah.
So I had more of a wait, that's straight up and down. So diagonals and so forth, and overlapping of and contrast. And I love the idea of using just the neutrals, neutral palettes only. I thought that was a really good idea. It's like, oh, I have plenty of black. I have plenty of white. Okay, I can get the gray.
Good,
So
good.
thanks, Rose.
Thank you. Well, that is the end of our hour. It's 4:30, and I want to thank everybody for being here, giving us an hour of your time. I want to say a warm thank you and congratulations to Dennis and Joan. I think you can tell from their presentation, they put so much thought and care into making this meaningful for you. They have the PDF of their PowerPoint that we'll send out with a survey. If you would please take a few minutes to do the survey. And if you let me know what you liked about this, Dennis and Joan have more great ideas. This was just the first one we were floating out. I had a hard time picking. We had like 3 that were just winners. So if you love this and you'd like to see more, please let me know that. And I love constructive criticism, and I pass those along to the presenters, unless I have like a real off the wall one. But anyway, it is helpful to us. We always want to get better and do more. So thanks everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So